On this James the Bike Guy, we're going to go over this huge mess of tools that I have right here. These are all tools that I purchased to be able to make a nice at-home toolkit. Now, with this being said, there's been a few sets of tools, say from like Bursman and things like that, Pedros, different brands that I thought had most of everything I needed. But the thing that I ran into when trying to put together a comprehensive at-home toolkit is a couple of things. Most of the pre-made kits have things that I already own and are not bike specific. Like, I don't need Phillips head screwdrivers or flat blades. You know, I don't need an adjustable wrench. I've got plenty of that stuff already at home in my own home toolkit. So what I wanted to spend my money on was all the different tools that are specialty that I'd need to be able to work on a bike and actually build it. So let's go ahead and start diving into the tools that I purchased. Now, I probably have undersold myself here, but I've got this kind of cool, you know, old style toolbox here. This I found, I just liked, you know, it's screen printed. I don't know, it's what I chose to do. It's probably not the end all be all solution, but it does work pretty well. Now, we'll start with some of the simple stuff. So I needed a set of Torx and Allens that are specific to the set. You know, I saw some of the Park Tools ones, which are a little bit expensive, and I ended up finding these at the local Tractor Supply. So in here, I'm gonna have your Torx setup, your SAE setup for Allen keys, and then of course, a set of metric Allen keys, which no doubt will be pretty useful. Should mention for higher torque situations, I do have a set of Allen keys and Torx bits already, and those are socket sets, so I'll use those with a ratchet. Next up, which is going to be pretty neat, this is the PP 1.2. This is a disc brake spreader. Basically, this spreads the pads should your pads come in contact with each other. The PP 1.2, nice little tool to have. From there, we've got the SR 1.2, another Park Tool product. This is a chain whip. This chain whip is compatible with just about everything out there. And then it's also got this socket end to be able to run some of the Freewheel and Cassette tools that we'll check out in just a few seconds. We'll start off with the CWP7. This is a crank puller. This does both your standard square taper as well as Octalink bottom brackets. This is a pretty cool setup because it's going to thread in and then it'll actually use your wrench to be able to loosen and actually extract the bottom bracket. So this is going to work out very nicely for sure. We've got the FR 5.2. The 5.2 is a Cassette Lockring tool. Pretty standard. This will work with Shimano, Sunray, Suntour, all those different brands for cassette tools. Nice quality, and Park Tools they hold up really well. It's the FR 1.3. Now, the reason I went with an FR 1.3 is because this is a deep socket freewheel remover. So in some future videos, I'll be actually upgrading a bike that's got a freewheel to it, and this is going to be incredibly necessary. Most higher quality bikes don't use freewheels anymore, but it's going to be a nice thing to have. To keep going with cassette or freewheel removers, right here we've got Campagnolo cassette or bottom bracket remover. Now, this tool right here, I honestly have no idea if I'll ever use. I've never actually owned anything Campy, but I figured, you know what, it's not a bad thing to have because this is never, it's never going to go bad. Now, another Pedros tool is going to be this one right here. This is the Splined bottom bracket remover. So this is for cartridge style bottom brackets. This is a 1/2-inch drive, and what I really like about these is it's actually got the hex style on the top, which means you can put that into vise, and that actually makes for a good way to, say, take off a cinch mechanism on the back of a race face or Easton crank that actually uses this same tool for that as well. Next up here is going to be the Pedros pedal wrench. This is the Apprentice size. They've got an Equalizer, which is an incredibly large one, the Pro, which is a little bigger, and then the Apprentice. But none of the bikes that I currently own actually use the 15mm box wrench. So I figured this would be just fine for the limited times that I'm going to be using a pedal wrench. Now next up is going to be the CNW2. This is a tool for the chainring nuts. So this actually holds the back of a chainring nut. It's going to be really important if you're ever, changing chain rings. It makes it a lot easier. I've seen people use flat blade screwdrivers rather than the two different sizes that are on the back of this. But a flat blade screwdriver usually mars up those chainring bolts, especially higher quality aluminum ones. Next up is going to be the BBT 10.2. This is a crank adjusting tool. So what this does is this actually adjusts the crank where the little black screw goes in on a Hollowtech 2 crank from Shimano. And then you'll also see it's got kind of this really neat almost lip or hook that's on there. And that's actually to pick up the black plastic locator that's in between the pinch bolts on that Shimano Octolink tool. Now with that, we're gonna see this guy here. This looks almost the same, but what this is, BBT16. This is actually a self-extraction nut. So you'll notice on some cranks, FSA is one of them, a few other brands, where you're actually gonna need a tool that almost looks the same as that adjusting nut, but instead it's gonna have this hex design. What's really neat is on the inside, this is actually a 6mm, so you can actually use leverage with it as well if you can't get it done with the butterfly style there. One thing that I know I'm not good at, and of course I could learn and get better at, is truing wheels. So I got an SW 7.2. This is a Park Tools, but what's really neat about this is it's got the 3 most common spoke nipple sizes. Because I know I'm not going to be using this on a really regular basis, I went ahead and I just bought a relatively inexpensive tool that does all 3. This should work out and work just fine. This is the TL 6.2. This is actually a metal-filled tire lever. Now, the tire lever itself actually has plastic around it, so it's not going to mar up your rim, but you actually don't want to use these on a regular basis. I mean, this is really only going to be for the very tightest of tight tires, something with a crazy wire bead, like a downhill tire or something like that. But I'll tell you, this will probably save me when I need it, and so I got it just in case. Now with that being said, who doesn't like Pedro's tire levers? I would argue that the Pedro's tire levers are without question the best ones around. So I went ahead, got 2 sets of these. Hopefully I'm not breaking that many tire levers anytime soon, but it's a good thing to have, and you can never have too many tire levers. Next is going to be the DT2. This is a Park Tools item here, a rotor truing tool. So it's going to have a spot to make real tight adjustments on the rotor, a slot here to be able to make larger or deeper adjustments, especially on the vanes of the rotor. But this will be a nice tool to have, the DT2. We're now going to have a chain measurer. This is the CC 3.2. This is a really great tool. Basically, this is going to be able to measure your 0.75 and your 0.5 millimeter of stretch, and that's going to allow you to be able to make sure that your chain is never too worn, always in the right condition. Next up, I think is actually going to be our quick link pliers. So I went ahead and went with the Pedro ones. I actually like the way they fit. I've played with a few different kinds, and I think these work pretty well. You're only using these every now and then when changing a chain, but it's a really crucial and helpful tool to have. You're going to then have your cable cutter. This is another Pedro's product. Cable cutters are super helpful because you'll wear out a set of side cutters in a hurry. This actually has a nice lock, and then you'll actually see it's angled to where you can cut through cables and housing without it fraying. So that's a real nice thing to have. Rounding out the Pedro's tools, this is actually a star nut setter. Now this is a pretty good specialty tool. Most of the bikes that I have or play with are actually carbon steer tubes, so this isn't going to be as necessary. So what this basically does is it is a guide to be able to align the tool to actually knock down your star nut into the fork, into an aluminum or steel fork. This fits an 1.1" on one side, or you can flip it over and it'll actually fit an inch steer tube as well. So we've got the CT 3.2. This tool is pretty neat because it'll fit almost all the chains that are out there. You can use this with Eagle, you can use it with a 7-speed, you can use it basically with anything. So it's a very nice tool to have. We then have a very, very specialty tool, but great. This is actually a park tool cutter that goes into a vise. So what this does is this actually goes into the vise, creates a guide, and then that way you can use the guide to be able to cut things like steer tubes. You can use the guide to cut seat posts, anything round, handlebars, you name it. That's what this is good for. And this is a really great tool to have. Finally, we're going to get into some bling. So the bling here is going to be my aluminum bottom bracket tools. We're going to start with the BBT 79. This is actually going to be the bottom bracket tool for things like race face, cinch, rotor bottom brackets, BB 3086, Hawk Racing, a whole bunch of things like that, zip, all that stuff. So that's a great bottom bracket to have there. Then we're going to have the BBT 69.2, and this is the standard 16-point bottom bracket tool that's going to be used for things like FSA, Shimano, Mega Exo, SRAM, all those outboard bottom brackets. This is going to be the tool to have for that. And then finally, we've got our BBT 59.2. This is another 16-notch tool. This is set up for the newer age Shimano, like the Durace or the Ultegra bottom brackets, kind of the smaller size, any of those higher end bottom brackets from Shimano this should work with. With that, of course, every toolkit's going to need a bleed kit. So this is the full professional bleed kit from SRAM. That does mean that inside of here it's going to come with bleed blocks, a lot of adapters, your syringes, kind of all that stuff that's necessary, and very neatly it's going to come with a bottle of dot fluid. You'll see in the build coming up soon that that's going to be a really important thing to have. And lastly, we've got the SPK1. This is a spork because, well, you might get hungry. So that's a look at all the tools that I decided I needed in my toolbox here to be able to work on the bikes. Notably, you might notice I don't have a repair stand. That's coming soon, but you'll see that in a later video. So go ahead and leave a comment down in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about all these different tools. Do you think it was overkill, the right ones? What do you think I missed in my toolkit? While you're at it, leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. Hit that subscribe button so you can see more videos like this into the future. And then I'll see you in the next one.